Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Best Words. This week, we're going to talk about how the Democrats lost their mojo and if they're going to get it back or ever learn from the lessons of history. I feel like it was the January 6th Commission loss. Like things were going really well. They passed the coronavirus aid bill. They did some really bold stuff. They really swung for the fences, and most importantly, they passed a bill that was popular. And when they were accused of not being bipartisan, Biden and Jen Psaki, his press secretary, said, "You know what? It is bipartisan. It's popular with the people." And it looked like the Democrats had finally learned the lesson of history, which is don't negotiate with terrorists, right? The Republicans are not your friends. And I felt like 20 pounds lighter. Like I could not believe it. This team, they've been the Washington Generals my entire life, right? Like just continually losing. Um, it's Lucy with the football and Charlie Brown. Like, why on earth do the Democrats continue to make good faith efforts at negotiating with bad faith people on the other side of the aisle? And it looked like the cloud had lifted. The cloud had lifted, and we finally understood what was at stake and how to deal with the Republicans. And then the January 6th commission vote happened, and it failed in the Senate by minus 19 votes. That is, they didn't have 60 votes to break a filibuster. It lost, right? And the entire Beltway media complex, for the most part, and a good portion of legislatures on both sides of the aisle said, "Well, okay, this is the way it is." I don't know if Biden said something, but he didn't say enough. There was just way too much acceptance of this is the way things are in Washington, and that's okay. So there's a lot of voices out there saying we need to get rid of the filibuster, but I don't think there's enough of them, and they're not strong enough, and they're not countering the people who should be on our side, who are not absolutely outraged by our system of government. And I feel like it's actually worse than that. After that loss, where they won by 19 votes, and it was presented in the press as losing because they couldn't break the filibuster, the Democrats lost it, and now they're proceeding to the For the People Act, which is revamping the Voting Rights Act and the infrastructure bill. They've absolutely lost their strategic zazz. They have no ability to see what how they should be approaching the Republicans. They finally broke out of a 40-year funk. They got humiliated on the January 6th commission vote, and just like that, they've forgotten all the lessons they learned. It's really, really frustrating to see Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema running the Democratic Party. It's really frustrating to hear Joe Biden is having Republicans over the White House nonstop, Senate Republicans, to water down the goddamn infrastructure bill. It started off at 2.7 trillion, and then now he, argued with himself, negotiated with himself down to 2 trillion, down to 1.2 trillion. The Republicans are coming along saying, well, we want it to be under a trillion, and we're not going to do any climate change stuff. And in Biden's Beltway worms fucking brain, he's thinking it's somehow deeply, deeply valuable to get Republicans on board. That there's something useful about that when he has both houses, and it's still somehow innately valuable to get Republican support for a bill. And it's not. And they're going to destroy both of these bills. The Senate is going to dither and dither and dither and then do nothing while the world burns. And it seems to me that not just Manchin is the problem. It seems to me that Schumer and Biden are institutionalists. They believe in the Senate, and that, my friends, is the problem because the Senate is a hot pile of trash. Even without the filibuster, 2 senators per state is ridiculous. Um, and so it's heartbreaking. We looked like we knew what we were doing. I allowed myself to feel a little optimism, and this is what I get for it.
You hit on a lot of important points there. Um, let's talk about the filibuster for 2 seconds. What's your opinion on the current iteration of the filibuster?
Uh, I don't like it. Um,
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be like this. It is not an ancient tradition. And even if it was an ancient tradition, there's a lot of ancient traditions that are terrible. But it's not an ancient tradition by any stretch. It dates to about the current iteration of the filibuster dates to like the 70s. There's other ways to do it. You don't have to have. In fact, this iteration is actually more recent than that. It dates to like Harry Reid and Mitch McConnell. There's no reason for them to be able to just say filibuster. They used to have to work, right? We all seen Mr. Smith goes to Washington. Like, if the filibuster means you get up there and you talk and
You
you
used
talk and you
you used
talk,
to
and
have a discussion. You used to have to be there in person on the floor and
I mean,
actually
Strom
have a
Thurmond
debate. You know?
wore diapers, right? Evil, evil piece of shit, but
Yeah.
pissed himself 3 times on the floor of the Senate.
Well, I believe that they should have to do that if they want to filibuster. Right?
Yeah,
Senate
if you want to
50.
filibuster,
If you're thinking about how the Senate works and how Democrats need to get an unfathomable amount of votes over the Republicans just to have an even ground in the Senate, it's fundamentally useless in the current iteration of it. If the filibuster doesn't go down to 50 votes and you could have a standing filibuster and be there on the floor debating, then it's useless. It needs to go immediately.
yeah, and they say, well, what about when we're the shoes on the other foot? Well, a couple points on that. Like, one, you could change it so it's 60% of the quorum and not 60% of the Senate body, right? That's a rules change. You can vote majority up, down. Manchin has hinted in the past that he'd be open to changing the rules regarding the filibuster, but not getting rid of it. So that way, only the team that is more committed to the cause will will win, right? If all the Republicans are out at fundraising dinners, then they'd still lose. They wouldn't be able to keep the filibuster alive. By requiring 60 votes and not 60% of the quorum, you just add one more tool to the obstruction playbook. But also, if the this whole notion that what about when the shoe's on the other foot? Well, a really good way to lose power is to do fucking nothing with it for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I have absolutely no patience for that argument at all. If you want to lose the Senate, waste the majority we gave you, and you'll see how that goes.
It goes both ways. You're not doing anything because of gridlock, or well, if say you don't have a filibuster, the Republicans are in power. Now, if they are a minority party, if they're passing a whole bunch of shit that nobody likes, then they're also going to lose power very quickly. So I don't think that that argument that you're talking about is very good, like you were saying. Um, yeah, it needs change immediately. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck in unending gridlock. We're never going to be able to get anything done. And the power structures and the system the way it is, they benefit. Republicans benefit from this type of gridlock because it keeps the status quo going as it's been going for the last 3 or 4 decades. And that's why they like it so much.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on the fundamental point. The why the whole shoe on the other foot argument doesn't really hold water. The Republicans don't want to do anything. The hell do they care of the filibuster, right? All they want to do is cut taxes. Taxes are done through budget reconciliation, not filibusterable, and appoint psychos as judges, also not filibusterable. There's absolutely no proactive legislation that they're concerned about. So what the hell do they care about the filibuster?
Well, they just use it as a tool, right? They'll use their BS arguments about how it's destroying democracy or something like that, even though it's complete opposite of that, the argument that they make. Yeah, they're not honest actors, and well, yeah.
And the Senate is not the greatest deliberative body in the world. In fact, it's the worst. I'm anti-Senate. I would be pro. This is where I go into. This is where I start. I touch on things that tend to be a little too far afield for most people, even on our side of the divide. And that is, I think we should get rid of the fucking Senate. I think it's a deeply, deeply flawed institution, or it should be neutered like the House of Lords. Um, when At the end of World War II, 1945, when we were writing Japan's constitution, they had two points they were really gung ho about. One was they had the continuity of the emperor and the royal family, and we were like, all right, that's fine. And the other one, and they were not really in a position to bargain. We had all the bargaining power. We had just devastated Japan in a war. They put their foot down when MacArthur tried to institute the equivalent of the Senate for their upper house. They said that's the dumbest thing they ever heard. Absolutely not. They have a mechanism in Japan where the upper house reapportions by population every so many years. I don't know, it's 5 or 10 or whatever. But you would never, ever in a million years set up a Senate the way it is now from scratch. It's preposterous.
Well, it's outdated and
And
ancient compared to what we really need today. I see the arguments for it, as you know, we're 50 states, very different. New York, very different from Texas. Texas, very different from Florida. Everything. So I get the point with people that defend the Senate. I don't know if I'm as far as you with getting rid of it, but I think that the House as a deliberative body is just a better representation of the people of this country. So while I might not say get rid of the Senate, I'd say we should put more power into the House of Representatives.
it's my job on this show to really come out of left field with the weird ideas, and it's
And I'll
your job to be
snap
a
us
little more.
back to reality.
Yeah, that's the dynamic here. The house is no prize. The house is no prize for a number of reasons, but they can all be fixed, right? The house was capped, was in the 20s, I think.
Yeah.
And so every house member represents somewhere between like 650 and 750,000 people. That's insane. Gerrymandering's out of control. But if you had an ungerrymandered, uncapped house, it would be very democratic right now. And that,
Yeah, right. They say that the Senate is supposed to, obviously each state gets two senators, and in the House, you're supposed to be representing more the population of your state. But having a population cap kind of destroys that, doesn't it? Um, California is still completely underrepresented when it comes to a state like Wyoming because of the population caps on the House. So what we have are
Mhm.
like we have a Senate and then almost like a mini Senate happening because smaller states with fewer people are given more of a voice, more of a vote, and more power relative to the larger states, which tend to be blue. So we're between a rock and a hard place right now. It can be fixed, like you said, though.
Yeah, and this whole notion that my favorite kind of Twitter reply is the guy who comes on and explains to you how things are when you're talking about how they should be. So you say abolish the Senate, and somebody comes on and say, well, actually, the House of Representatives is for that, and then the Senate is everybody gets two votes. It's like, yeah, asshole, I know that. What I'm saying is it's preposterous that these municipal entities each get two votes. They should be represented equally. A state's just a glorified county, right, with its own license plate. It is an accident of history that we give this particular municipal layer such, kind of overwrought emotional weight in our lives, and it leads to bad policy. Because the states really used to be different states. Fun fact: Pennsylvania, where I grew up, and Virginia fought a number of border wars. I mean, skirmishes, not like giant field battles, but a number of skirmishes over land. Uh, New York and Vermont actually almost went into a hot shooting war, and so there were a couple. Um, Connecticut, I think, almost got into war with New York too. So before the Revolution, the states actually went to war with each other a couple times. The Civil War was not the first war between the states, so they really were different states where their militias fought each other, and they were separate. It was much more like the EU, where the notion that they needed equal representation in a body, which was almost rejected then. Um, this was not like a popular idea. It was a compromise. Was it not that great of an idea then, but now it's ridiculous. The notion that the states could go to war with each other now in 2021 or really any time since 1865 is absurd. So the states are not different states in any meaningful sense, so they should not be treated as such. But I have friends from small states who get really mad when I say that, but absolutely take away. They said, "What about Vermont? Vermont's got two good senators." It's like, yeah, that's whatever. So the principle is the principle, and tiny ass states should not have the same number of senators.
Okay. We hit on something else before. I wanted to just kind of bring in Joe Biden. Joe Biden. Um, what are the biggest mistakes that you think that he's making right now with not any of these things by themselves, but as a whole, the January 6th Commission, the Voting Rights Act, um, and also the infrastructure bill.
I mean, I think I don't think. I'm not sure he has the fire to get the job done, and I think he's a naive institutionalist. You know, every senator has something they want and something they're afraid of. You know, Joe Biden was really a practitioner of the dark arts. Joe Manchin's daughter is the CEO of a pharmaceutical company that price gouged on EpiPens, right? Um, I'm sure her taxes are dirty. I'm sure maybe the House wants to look into price gouging in the EpiPen market, or maybe they don't. Joe, it's up to you, right? Like, how is nobody putting him
Something
in a?
tells me that's not going to
No, they'll never do that. They're institutionalists. It's not how we do things here. They believe in the sacred deliberative body that is the Senate. And I think that's his biggest mistake. And it's really exceptionally disappointing because, you know, we were talking before the show about the ACA and Obama's mistakes in 2009 and how it's doubly disappointing. You know, one, because it appears they did not learn them, and two, because 5 months ago it looks like he had in fact learned from them. Um,
happen. Right. Well,
you know,
yeah. Well, right, like we were talking about before with the ACA. What was Obama's big mistake? It was, how can I placate Republicans to bring them on board to my bills to get them to pass? Now he had many more senators. He had a supermajority for a little bit. Kennedy, there was a whole situation with Kennedy, so he had 59 for a good portion of the time. But what winds up happening with the ACA is you wind up watering it down and watering it down and watering it down, and at the end of the day, the Republicans don't sign on to it anyway. Republicans are not good faith actors in this country, and that is something that Obama didn't realize. I was watching he had an interview with somebody a couple weeks ago, and I think that he's always been like that, but I think he's more starting to realize that that was probably the biggest regret of his presidency was not being more aggressive with Republicans and not caring so much if they came to his side. But it seems as if that Biden is going to start making the same mistakes. When you're right, when he first came in with the $1,400 checks, it seemed like he was like, you know what, I'm going to get it done. I don't care if they come in. And now he's flipping on that and going back to that old playbook, that Obama playbook. Like, hey, let's water this down. Let's take the infrastructure bill. It's $2 trillion. Let's cut it in half, and then they don't sign on to it anyway. So my hope for Joe Biden is that he knows this, he sees this, and he goes, you know what? I don't care. We're gonna go along with this anyway. I'm gonna force people like Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema to sign up for this. How he does that, I don't know. Maybe just by rhetoric, speaking more. Why doesn't he ever run a rally? Come on, take something out of Trump's playbook, right? Get people excited. Get people to call their senators, call Joe Manchin, call Kristen Sinema. Let's get these guys let's put some fire under their ass for like the first time in their life.
yeah, I mean they really don't care. And Manchin's not going to be reelected. We're never going to see another Democrat out of that state in not in the next decade or two. And you know, and Kristen Sinema, we are going to see another Democrat out of Arizona. And it sure as hell isn't going to be her. Nothing special about her. And so, you know, there's the flip side, right? There's carrots and sticks. So Manchin, we could, I'm sure, you know, do something untoward towards his daughter's financial standing in the world. I think the stakes are high enough to warrant anything, you know, anything like that. I truly don't care about following the rules of decorum. We're talking about people's lives here. The other thing is you know, good old fashioned pork spending. Like, I don't give a shit if Wheeling, West Virginia has to look like Singapore in 5 years, right? Like, I don't care if you got to put up acres of high rises in Charleston, right? Bribe this man, bribe him, make him the hero in West Virginia. Um, do what you got to do. The federal government has untold resources they could funnel into West Virginia. Name your price, Joe. Name your price. And they're not even. They don't want to play rough. They don't want to, you know, say, hey, you know, your daughter's got a nice pharmaceutical firm there. Maybe she doesn't. If she doesn't want to go that route, then fine. At least bribe the fucking guy. And they don't want to play it either way. They're just,
Yeah,
well, that's Joe.
you
Not
do.
good enough.
You need to play hardball somewhere to get to what you want in politics. The Republicans have been doing this for decades, and that's why they always get everything that they want. I mean, besides the fact that the system already favors their side because money's behind it, and it's the status quo, so it's going to stay that way. But yeah, Joe, this was my problem with Joe Biden. Now, obviously, if it's him or Trump, I'm voting for Joe Biden. Okay, lesser two evils thing, whatever. But this is why you have to show up in primaries. This is why you have to. You can't just vote every 4 years in a presidential election. Superman isn't coming. You need to get more involved in politics. You need to vote your conscience in the primary. And if it comes around, you don't win, then okay, you got to go with the less two evils. But this is my problem with Joe Biden. I knew when he won, I was like, oh, thank God. But I knew that stuff like this was just a couple of weeks, couple months away. We're going to be seeing this the whole time. This is the way that he's ran his entire political career. And like you said, he's an institutionalist. He just believes in these systems for some unknown reason. I mean, I guess it's worked out for him. Doesn't work out for anybody else, but it's worked out for Joe Biden. So
Yeah, and I mean, look, the boomers, as a rule, are institutionalists. The world was pretty good to that generation, at least fiscally. And I don't know if I'm technically a millennial or 1 or 2 years out, but the millennials are not institutionalists. And y'all are going to burn these systems down because they're not working. And the founding fathers were not. This is a whole other episode. But the founding fathers didn't believe in originalism. They would have laughed it out of the room. It'd be the dumbest thing they ever heard. You want to just follow everything we set up. We told you to change the system when it started creaking. And so we need to change the system. Joe Biden believes in the system more than he believes in the outcome, and yeah, not good enough.